elementary kids love to read, and they love to talk about the books they want to read. This book is really fascinating because it's kind of like a VH1 time capsule of the story behind the story. Funny enough, that's the title to the book also. The stories behind the stories, the remarkable true tales behind your favorite children's books. It's from Danielle Higley. It looks at 28 books that most kids know. I mean, I say most kids. I read it to a 4th grade class, and I read one of the snippets, which I'll explain in a minute. And they knew all but 2 of the books of the 28. And these were 4th graders. Think of any book that a 4th or 5th grader would want to read, like Magic Treehouse, Giving Tree, Charlie Chocolate Factory, Lion Witch Wardrobe, Charlotte's Web, Peter Wendy, obviously Peter Pan, Night Before Christmas, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, lots more. And it takes a look at as to how the books and how the stories were created in a way that 4th and 5th graders can understand. It's a little vignette, essentially, 28 little vignettes of how these books and how the authors got the motivation for the story. Like some of the one, like the Wimpy Kid author, Kenny, it talks about how his story basically came about because he had these stories in his head, but he wasn't a talented enough artist to get them out in a way that most people would accept. So he was like, well, I'll just make it in a way that kids will accept it, and the rest is Wimpy Kid history. And that's just one little vignette, and each little story is spelled out in about a page and a half of text that most 4th graders can read. All 5th graders should be able to read. And I consider this a it's a great resource to use for kids who are doing book reports aside from the common cookie cutter stuff that 4th and 5th graders do for book reports. Because as a teacher, and even as a kid, it gets kind of blasé and boring doing a book report on whatever, poisonous cat beetles from Tanzania and the other outlandish insects and birds and reptiles that most elementary school kids will choose. Why not just do this? Why not something that's a little more practical, like the author from one of the books that you will learn to love or that have already read and love, plus the illustrations and the stories behind the story, behind the stories, 2 plurals there. The illustrations are gorgeous. It's also a situation where the kids, the audiences, will come for the fact that, there's a book about, it's a little vignette about Winnie the Pooh, or about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And there's also gorgeous art. The art is something that I would maybe place in an Eric Carle book. It looks kind of cut out and pasted, very abstract, but very pretty and easy for kids to latch on to and love. Check it out. It's a book that is going to help kids know that there are more books out there if they're maybe stuck on one favorite series of books. I'm looking at you, Percy Jackson, or Hogwartians, because they're in this book also. Want to learn about how those books started? Check out the stories behind the stories, and it's going to be great for those kids in grade 4 and up.